Are Korean sunscreens bad for you? The US having the highest rate of skin cancer. I personally do not know what the hype is about the beauty of chosen sunscreens. There, I said it. Hi everyone, welcome back to the essence of it all with me, Charlotte Cho. Everyone's been asking me the same thing, Korean sunscreens. Korean sunscreens are literally the talk of the town. I'm going to do a deep dive on several topics. Number one, why are Korean sunscreens so popular? Number two, are there reasons why Korean sunscreens are being banned from coming to the US? Is it unsafe for my skin? And number three, how can I still get my hands on superior Korean sunscreens? If you're new here, I'm Charlotte Cho. I'm the co-founder of Soko Glam, a Korean beauty e-tailer, and the co-founder of Then I Met You, which is a Korean sensorial skincare brand. I'm also an esthetician, and I've been talking about Korean beauty for over 13 years now. So let's get into it. Let's go back to the basics. Why are people in love with Korean sunscreens? Are they more superior? Well, first of all, they are very lightweight. They're elegant formulations that are fast absorbing and they don't leave a white cast. And so that's really important, especially with a country filled with varying skin tones. It's all thanks to advanced UV filters like Tinsorbes. These filters are chemical filters and they're all approved and safe in other parts of the world except for the US. The past 20 years, we have had no sunscreen filter regulations passed to allow more of these innovative filters to come through. And that has been a boon on our sunscreen selection. And it's been such a damper on the elegant formulations that we see coming out of other countries. We simply just can't compete. It's also cultural too. In the US, it's been 20 years since we've had any movement in sunscreen regulations for new filters. In Korea, there's just so much drive for innovation with their formulations. I think it has a lot to do with the people, the consumers in Korea who are absolutely obsessed with taking care of their skin, staying out of direct sunlight, avoiding direct UV rays, and they also have just a higher bar for the formulas they put on their skin. So this breeds better quality formulations. Cosmetic companies must constantly be on their toes to make the best formulations, and that results in Korean innovation and the sunscreens that everyone is loving around the globe. There was a major change that happened last summer that kind of messed everything up. So up until this point, Korean brands were bringing in their Korean sunscreens through back channels, shipping it from other countries into the US for US consumers. As Korean sunscreens started to get more popular, the FDA started to notice and they started to crack down. As of last summer, they created something called the MOCRA Act to have better and tighter regulations of cosmetics coming from abroad into the US. And that put a damper on the K sunscreen trend. So with the introduction of the MOCRA Act, not only is the brand going to be penalized if they start sending their products to the US, even though they're not legally allowed to be sold, but also the manufacturers of these sunscreens can also be penalized. That's a huge reason why Korean brands are finally stopping their back channels to come into the US and just shipping it from third-party retail sites that are shipping from abroad. So that has really put a stop to it. That's why people are freaking out on TikTok, talking about how that they're stockpiling their favorite Korean sunscreens. It's been a huge deal. If I were a Korean brand, I would also not want to be blacklisted by the US FDA because it doesn't just impact the sunscreen that I'm trying to sell. It will impact your entire brand. And the US is a huge market. A Korean brand cannot survive if they only rely on the Korean market because US is a huge market for cosmetics and it cannot be ignored. When Soko Glam first got started 13 years ago, we have always abided by the US FDA regulation, and that's because we are shipping to all of our customers from the US. So we import all the products from Korea and bring it into the US ports, so everything does get checked by the FDA, and that means that our selection, while it's been a pretty small, tightly curated selection, it's all been FDA approved. And so I really encourage you to check out our selection because you know that those will not be banned. A lot of the brands that we've been talking to that are curated to Soko Glam, they have been in the works of creating sunscreens for the US market. I almost knowing that this would be an issue eventually, I'm really pleased to test the newness that's been coming out of these brands. It's been really exciting to see them work around the limitations of more antiquated US filters. And the formulas are great. You know, I really think that they've even pushed the envelope in terms of mineral sunscreen and the capabilities you can get here in the US, even though things have not been updated in so long in terms of the filters that they could use. One of the burning questions I always get is, are Korean sunscreens bad for you? I mean, if the US has not approved these filters, maybe it's not good for you. Korea has done extensive studies on these filters. It's been 20 years since the US FDA has even looked at the filters that are coming from other countries. I wouldn't say that it's a safety issue at all. On top of it, I think what you should be more concerned about is shopping for sunscreens on sites like Amazon, which aren't regulated tightly. They have allowed a lot of counterfeit beauty products to actually go through their channels because it's kind of like a mass marketplace. I've had a customer reach out to Soko Glam admitting and mentioning that they've purchased from Soko Glam for so many years. They have a favorite sunscreen and they finally bought something on Amazon and they received it in the mail and they tried it and it was not at all the texture of what they're used to. And, you know, this is a super fan of the sunscreen and they just felt like something was off. We ended up buying from that listing to check it out. And we actually did a whole sunscreen test using a UV camera. And I was really sad and disappointed to say that this had no sun protection, no UV filters. Literally, this customer would have been applying this for years on end thinking she was getting protection when she really wasn't. I would just caution buying a sunscreen product on a retailer that doesn't really tightly regulate those kind of things. This is a hot take. I personally do not know what the hype is about the beauty of chosen sunscreens. There, I said it. It's a little controversial, as I said. To be honest, I feel like the formulation is a dime a dozen in Korea, but somehow it's taken the US by storm. Good for them on the marketing, good for them on getting that sunscreen out there maybe first. But when you go to Korea, a lot of the sunscreens feel like Beauty of Chosun. And I have to say that when they are reformulated everything for the US market, it feels just very similar to the original. So I think they did a great job. But to the point of their whole reformulation project, you'd be surprised at the Korean formulations that are now designed for the US, that are also curated on Soko Glam, are very lightweight. They don't smell like sunscreen and they work for all skin types. Like even when I was creating Then I Met You's Essence Light sunscreen, I always knew that I had to stick by the US regulations. I never was planning on shipping it from Korea to our US community. It has all of the typical US filters, but it is great for all skin types and it's super moisturizing and it's actually one of our best sellers here at Soko Glam and Sephora, and it's SPF 50. And so this is a chemical sunscreen, and some of these here, like the Sunstick from Abib, you'd be shocked at how seamless this glides on your skin, and it also has SPF 50 rating. We just newly curated Knours Koolsol, and this is a broad spectrum SPF 50 formulation as well, very lightweight, very similar to Beauty of Chosun. Thank You Farmer has always had great sunscreens. They had to reformulate the Essence sunscreen that I used to love, but when they came out with the broad spectrum 30 SPF and the one here, the SPF 40 moisture, that one's a little bit thicker, a little bit more for mature skin types or dry skin types. That is also just so seamless and it's such a pleasure to apply. And I've been testing and trying so many formulations coming out of Korean manufacturers based here in the US that are working primarily with mineral filters. And it's shocking. It's like jaw-dropping, like, oh, wait, I think we're going to be fine here with US filters. It's just that you just had to have the Korean touch to it in terms of pushing the limits of mineral. Without a doubt, do not think that these Korean brands will come up with great formulations that are going to be similar and just as popular. I think there's nothing to freak out about. I encourage you to first try out Soko Glam's curated list because you know that these are coming directly from the brand. There's no counterfeit here. And number two, these are all US FDA approved, so you're not gonna have to worry about switching out. I know when you find a sunscreen you love, you wanna keep rebuying that, and it's hard to kind of date around and find another sunscreen that you like. So start here because you know that these are not going anywhere. Do I think that the US filters are gonna change anytime soon? Not at this rate. Actually, they're adding more stringent regulation amongst the existing US filters to protect them. It seems so crazy to me that the US is so stringent on these filters and being innovative with sunscreen options because clearly there's an issue with the US having the highest rate of skin cancer in the entire world. It's a country with the highest skin cancer rate versus Korea, which is at like 40. But I really think that if it's going to take like regulation change, it's going to need to go through like Capitol Hill. There needs to be a lot more people rallying behind this topic. I don't know if we're going to get there, but for now, what I think is going to happen is I think Korean companies are going to have to come in and try to work with the cards that they've been dealt with the filters that exist a little less thick and chalky and pasty. They're going to put their magic behind it, and you're going to see a lot more innovation coming through the door with existing US filters, and that's what's just going to have to happen. Before we end the segment, some quick sunscreen tips. Number one, a lot of people neglect certain areas of their body when they apply sunscreen. Number one, on top of your ears. Also, don't forget your neck, your hands. Your hands are some of the most exposed parts of your body throughout the seasons, and that's why as you age, you see some of those aging spots, those dark spots on your hands. So make sure you always reapply. People don't realize this, but you're washing your hands multiple times a day because you're using the restroom, and a lot of that sunscreen that you may have applied in the beginning of the day has washed off. So it's a great idea to put a sunscreen in your bag and use it kind of as a hand cream, because this is the area that gets the most sun exposure throughout all seasons, and you're going to want to protect this area. Also, the tops of your toes, your nose, your cheekbones, that's where you could get most pigmentation, because that's where the sun directly hits first and gets the most sun exposure. Another tip is if you use a lot of fragrance, and a lot of people tend to apply fragrance and spritz on their chest area, that is going to track those UVA, UVB rays. So make sure to always cover your chest, especially as the weather gets warmer and you're wearing lower cut things, then you want to make sure you put sunscreen and then spray the fragrance. Last tip is when you apply your sunscreen, using the 2-finger method is something that I can recommend, but also it's equally important to just reapply. For me, I have to admit that I'm not reapplying that same amount I do in the morning later in the day. It's tough to do that over makeup. It's also tough to find time to just go to a mirror and like do the whole thing and rub it in. So I'm usually doing some touch-ups, like using a sun stick or a cushion compact that has SPF. I know that was a lot of sunscreen information, maybe more than you even care to know, but this is a deep dive into sunscreen regulations and how it's going to affect, your favorite Korean sunscreens. I'm very hopeful for the future. I think that we can work with what US has regulated, and I think that with time, eventually there will obviously be change. I just wouldn't hold your breath for it right this instant. There's so many great options. I can't wait for you to dive into it. As I said, check out Soko Glam for all the US FDA approved Korean sunscreens that we have vetted and approved. And also, if you have any questions, comment down below. We're happy to answer, because just in case we haven't covered your specific question, we're happy to take the time to answer that. All right, until next time, see you later. Bye.